is Max Brooks. Thank you. And I'm going to be introducing George Romero. I'll be asking him some questions, so will you guys? I've never done this before. I've never introduced anyone. I don't really know how to do it, so my only experience is watching Spike Lee's movie where Malcolm X introduces Elijah Muhammad, so I'm just going to borrow from that. Everything I am that I have learned, I attribute to this dear man. What is George Romero trying to say? What does he have going on? George Romero came here with 60 minutes of sleep.
Testify!
George Romero flew all the way from Canada.
Hallelujah!
George Romero already has a project, Diary of the Dead, which is almost finished. And that's what we're going to talk about with many other things. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable George Romero. George will be here all weekend signing at the Avatar booth. Night of the Living Dead comic. Now, George, I just want to open with a question which, if you say it, it sounds mercenary, so I'll just ask it. You've made a ton of movies. You have so much material out there. Of all the things you've made, which ones that we rent or buy puts the most money in your pocket?
No, unfortunately, none of them. The only ones, I have never gotten a nickel on the back end of any film, and it's true. I get union residuals. That's it. And, well, if everybody kicks in, let me see, $10 or so, we can make a flick. No, thanks. From Dawn of the Dead, actually, my ex-partner, Richard, actually has returned some checks, profit money to me from that.
Oh, nice.
So that's been, but that's really the only time that, the fees, you make good fees, but only on the studio pictures, and most of the stuff that I've done is smaller, independent film. So, and this new one in particular is just a little guy.
Let's talk about this new one, Diary of the Dead.
Yeah.
What about it?
I don't know. I think it's pretty good.
It's a base. I mean, it's a sort of a hard story to tell. It goes back to it's not a continuation. It's not sort of the fifth film in the series. It goes back to the first night when the dead are coming back. I sort of felt that I'd gone with Land of the Dead, gone sort of far enough with that, and that I was ready to get off that train. And if I make any more of these, I think I'll probably there was a collection of short stories, actually 2 volumes, called Book of the Dead, and they were all short stories about what happens on that first night. And I sort of came to realize that I could just keep doing stories about different people over those first 2 or 3 nights.
I'd watch it.
So. That's what this one is. It's about a bunch of college kids that are out shooting film students that are out shooting a school project when the shit hits the fan, and they just keep shooting. So they shoot that. Basically shoot a little documentary about what they see over the 400 miles between, or 300 miles between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
It's all their POV. It's all through their cameras.
It's all subjective camera. And they have two cameras. They start with one. They find another in a hospital, and then it's just that. And then they have a camera phone, and then it's just those cameras and security cameras.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, a bit of a conceit, but it was really fun to do.
And premiering in Toronto?
It's going to premiere at the Toronto Film Festival.
Thank you. Now we can begin.
Reminding us, too.
Who we are.
Oh my God, that's George Romero!
Yeah, it's going to first be shown in North America at the Toronto Film Festival of Midnight Madness.
And then Spain.
And Sitges in Spain, yeah, for European. Actually, we have European distribution already been sold in most territories, but we don't have North American distribution yet.
Really?
They've been holding back on it. They haven't even shown it to anyone.
Oh, really?
They figured they would make a better deal if, maybe Dawn of the Dead opened in Europe first, before we ever had U.S. distribution.
Really?
Yeah. So, sometimes with a smaller independent film, no stars in it and all that, they find that that's the best strategy to take.
Every country, including the U.S., which one would you say has had the most appreciation of your movies?
Probably, I don't know which. Germany, Italy, and Japan.
The Axis.
Yeah. Not evil anymore, though.
No, they're just...
We got new access.
We've got a whole new sleuth of enemies. So, actually, I'm just talking to George Romero. You guys can do whatever you want. Your film, the original zombie movies, the ones that you are obviously a product of your generation, one of the few filmmakers that actually still put social commentary, God forbid, in movies. And your generation had its own challenges. And what do you think challenges this generation the most?
Oh, trying to have faith in anything, I think. It's just trying to find a reason to keep trucking,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just institutions, individuals, government institutions, institutions of learning. I mean, it's just, where do you go, man? Where do you find
Hard to find the heroes.
Hard to find the heroes, yeah. So, I think that's probably the hardest thing to overcome personally, and to maintain some kind of continued ambition, or any sort of inspiration.
Is there in Diary? Is there social commentary?
Yeah, it's about media. It's about these people become obsessed with doing what they're doing, shooting, and it's the whole commentary about how does having access to all this and seeing everything a million different ways, just makes you immune to violence, or it inures you to that kind of violence.
A desensitization. If you're constantly bombarded from every angle.
Exactly. And what happens to my characters is they get so desensitized that they just keep shooting, and they're just looking at the world that way, and that becomes enough.
Right. This is gonna be awesome. I'm sorry. If at some point I turn into the Chris Farley character from SNL, just forgive me. Before we started, I was telling him how much I liked a movie he made called Season of the Witch.
It's 9 people have seen it.
And how...
Including you.
Yeah, I loved it. I could keep watching it. And if you ever could remake it.
Yeah, well, that's the only film that I made that I would like to remake. I think it could be pertinent in a different way today. I obviously needs a rewrite, but you know, there are still women's issues, and there are still, you know, jerky guys like her husband that are still, you know, brutal and just to say nothing of not only insensitive but actually brutal. And so I think I'd like to remake it. I mean, it was a film we made it on 90 grand. We ran out of money. It was the brokerage that was raising money, you know, stopped sending checks suddenly, and so we had to hurry up and finish it. And so I've always felt that it's not really a complete work.
Yeah.
You know, we sort of managed to get a rope around it and finish it in a halfway decent way, but just given the resources that we had. But I'd like to take another whack at that. It's the only one that I think I'd like to try to redo.
Hypothetically, somebody gives you all the money you need to make any kind of movie you want. A tax shelter, I don't know, but they do it.
Those were the days.
Yeah. What would you do?
I'd probably make a bunch of movies. Take the money and say, hey, if I got a deal for you, I'll make them as long as I'm standing, you know. That's probably what I would do. I don't have a desire, and I don't have any particular project that I think needs, you know, that megabucks to
Right.
pull it off. I don't have, you know, something sitting in the drawer that, you know, I wish I had $100 million to make this. I'd love to take a crack at something like that, but I don't know what it would be. And, you know, it's purely hypothetical, because I'm not looking for that. Nobody's chasing me, you know, with that kind of an offer. So I'm happy to just I feel like I'm playing with electric trains or something. You know, I'm just happy to still be here and still working, and hopefully I got a couple of more films in me, and, you know, take it from there. Ideas come, you know, I get like everyone else, I guess. Like, you know, where do you get your ideas? In the shower? I mean, I don't know, basically, yeah, or off CNN.
Yeah.
You know, you see something on CNN and go, whoa, man, what shit is this? And, you know, then you know, that it just sort of triggers, you know, all kinds of ideas. So my ideas come from that, and if I can, you know, sort of handily figure out a way to do a story about it, then I'll sit down and try to write it. But well, many of them are you know, still on the hard drive, you know, half finished.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but who told you could be a filmmaker?
Me?
Back in the day, you're this kid in the '60s. You said, I want to make movies. What was the inspiration?
Well, I loved movies. I didn't think that I could ever do it. I thought you had to be born royalty, you know, in order to ever be able to make a career out of it. And in those days, when my partners and I got together, we set up a little commercial production company, beer commercials, industrial films, stuff like that, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we were successful. But, you know, in those days, there were film labs. There was no such thing as video. So cities the size of Pittsburgh had film labs. Just film labs the size of Technicolor. I mean, big film labs that were, you know, processing. And the news was on film. And that's where I first learned how to use the medium. I would bicycle the newsreels around to the TV stations. And I'd sit with these editors, you know, these guys with the flammable glue pots and cigarettes hanging out. Going. And really, that was at one of those labs, and working with the news guys. That I just sort of learned. Oh, that's how you synchronize sound with picture. Oh, that's a synchronizer. Now I'm lost again with all this digital stuff. I need sprocket holes. You know.
When did you give up your Steenbeck?
I wish I didn't. We used to have three. Actually, I liked Moviola flatbeds.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they were the most intuitive. And we wound up whenever we closed that company down, the commercial company, which we had all the way through Dawn. I used that equipment all the way through Night Riders.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, you have a reputation of being a nice guy. And I know that you have flirted with Hollywood in the past.
There's a couple of me, though.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure you don't have to name names, but has there ever been moments, I'm just asking for me, just Pretend they're not there.
Well, I'll give you some names.
Yeah, you're in a meeting with some, they call them creative executives, which is funny because they're neither creative nor are they executive in that they don't make decisions. Has there ever been a time where you thought, wow, if murder wasn't illegal?
Yeah, there was. We were on a contract. We were on contract to MGM to do a project called Before I Wake, and they kept stalling it and stalling it. I mean, the production had been designed, locations were picked, and it was all ready to go, and they just kept stalling and stalling. And that in the meantime, I had written The Mummy for Universal. Not the Mummy they eventually made. Mine was much more, old-fashioned and homage to the original Karloff, and much more of a romance. And Universal greenlit it. I mean, actually greenlit it.
We're going to production.
Going to production. And that we had 12 days to run on the MGM contract, and MGM said, no, we're not going to let you out. They got the executive there said, I will lay down in front of a truck if we don't make Before I Wake. And 12 days later, they didn't make Before I Wake. And in the meantime, Universal and MGM got in a pissing contest, and Universal walked, and so neither project happened. So that was one of the things actually that made me leave. I mean, there was a period there for about 8 years where we had a housekeeping deal at New Line, and we were at MGM and Fox for a while with Chris Columbus, and I did Goosebumps, I did The Mummy, I did all these projects that were, I was just hoping to get to do, and none of them ever happened. So at the end of that, finally at the end of that period, I wrote a little script called Bruiser, and we went to a French company and financed it, and just found a way around the Hollywood thing. I mean, that whole period, I made more money than I've ever made in my life, but I never made any movies.
It's stunning how much money you can make doing nothing.
Doing nothing.
Nothing in Hollywood.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's.
They just piss it away, It's like.
I just wonder where it went. It just.
This project Before I Wake was at New Line, then at MGM, and then Chris Columbus picked it up for Fox. By the time we were done rewriting it, redeveloping it, and everything at Fox, it was prohibitive. No one will ever make this movie because it's already got $4 million attached to it.
Right.
Before you ever even pick up the script.
Because once you write a script and somebody buys it from them.
Yeah.
And then if you have to buy it from them, you have to pay them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And each one was, there was the original writer that submitted it to New Line was paid. I was paid to do drafts at New Line. I was paid to do drafts at MGM and then at Fox. And then they paid, actually Pat Totopoulos was going to did design work on it. I mean, it was just a fabulous, beautiful thing. And, just by the time they lay out all this money and location scouts and designers and everything else, it's just all, pretty soon they tally it up and say, oops, we can't afford to make this movie. Or else it becomes so cast dependent that, they tried that. Chris tried to get Sharon Stone to do it. And, that was before she was willing to, lower herself to do a genre thing.
Oh, right. She did Basic Instinct, which was classy.
Yeah, right. No. This was it. Right. She did that Dead Woman Walking. What was the name of that movie? Where she did the, sort of Dead Man Walking. But I forget the name of it.
Yeah, it was original.
Yeah. And then she was hoping for an Oscar for...
Basic Instinct 2.
No. The Scorsese, Casino.
Oh, Casino, right.
So then a couple of years later, she went and did Diabolique, or what was that other thing?
Oh, that's right.
So,
which was
pretty
remake.
rough. Yeah.
Now,
go figure.
Now, who were your influences when you started going to the movies? Who did you look at and say, wow, that's...
Well, I think that I imitate, probably, I'm parasitic. I steal most from Orson Welles, stylistically.
If you're gonna steal.
And so he was one of my guys. But the film that made me want to make movies is a little film that hardly anyone's ever seen. I recommend it to anyone who likes fantasy. It's called The Tales of Hoffman. It's a Michael Powell film. And it's an opera, but it's just gorgeous, man. It's beautiful. Have you ever seen it?
I've never seen Tales of Hoffman.
Tales of Hoffman. It's the opera, but Michael converted it into it's 3 tales. He falls in love with sort of a vampiress and with a mechanical doll. It's pure fantasy. And a comic fan, if you can't stand the opera, turn the sound off and just look at the visuals. It's just beautiful. But it also got me going on classical music and everything else. But it was also very transparent. I mean, this guy had no money, and he was just using his instincts and obvious tricks, reversing the image, and doing things that were very transparent, double exposures. And so it gave me the idea that, hey, I can see how that's done. Maybe I could try to do that.
And then you made Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, not immediately.
No, you didn't run out.
Those days, though, it's funny. This is a story. In those days, you couldn't. This was when I was still in New York, where I lived through high school. You couldn't. Again, no such thing as video. So if you wanted a movie in your home, you had to go rent to some audiovisual place, rent a projector, 16 millimeter projector, and then go to some place like Janus and rent a print. And there's a story that Scorsese tells and I tell. There were only 2 guys in New York that ever took out the Tales of Hoffman, and it was me and him. And so whenever he went down there, if it was out, I had it, and vice versa. The guy would say, "There's this guy Scorsese, some kid. He lives in Brooklyn." And we never met during that whole time, but when we finally did meet, we had a great chuckle over it. So we've both done commentaries on the DVD versions.
Really, both of you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I imagine Scorsese and you would both know what it's like to be underappreciated by the commerce element of Hollywood.
Yeah. we actually did a project together. We worked on a project together, and during that same period, another one that didn't happen.
Really?
Yeah, it was a TV series called Hell Hotel. And ABC, Disney, and it looked like it was going to fly, and what Marty was going to produce. I had written the pilot and was going to direct the pilot. And,
oh my God.
And they just beat us around with it. And they were a little afraid because it was, supernatural. They were uncertain about it.
Right, because that never makes money, science fiction.
No.
Right.
Well, TV, I guess at that time it wasn't. There had been a lot of things that had come and gone and failed.
So some genius sat down and said, George Romero, Martin Scorsese, screw it, let's do Alf.
Yeah. I'm sure that's right.
When you did Night of the Living Dead, obviously you didn't set out to start a genre. But at what point since did you turn around and say, I started a genre?
I haven't turned around and said that yet. I don't know. I didn't think of these creatures as zombies. I basically ripped off the idea from a Richard Matheson novel called I Am Legend.
Right.
Which I thought was very much about revolution. It's been made a couple of times in the films. I don't know. Do you know it?
Well, there's Vincent Price, and he was Last Man on Earth.
Yeah. And it's the world everyone's become a vampire. The world has turned vampire. And he's the last man on Earth, and thus the title now, human, is legendary. And I thought, gee, he started the story with where there was only one man left. And the story to me was very much about revolution, and I thought the best way to tell a story like that is to start at the beginning, on the very first night, and see what happens and how it develops. So to that extent, I ripped off the idea, and it's the first film, which I wrote originally as a short story. It's also a siege in a house, which is similar to what the novel was. I've fessed up. He knows. We're still friends, or we were friends a couple of years ago. And I needed a creature. So I said, okay, well, what would be one of the most revolutionary things that could possibly happen to mankind? That he would be stupid enough to either not believe or not accept, or And I said, well, what if the dead stop staying dead? That seems like a pretty, something that should catch your eye.
It's pretty revolutionary.
So that's what I went with. But in my mind, they were just ghouls. They were flesh eaters. My original title was Night of the Flesh Eaters.
Oh.
And when Walter Reed picked it up for distribution, they changed the title to Night of the Living Dead, which was their title.
That wasn't yours.
Yeah. And that's how we lost our copyright.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I see all these different versions everywhere.
Yeah. Some of them, we've tried to do some of them. I mean, we had a little, we were just a bunch of guys from Pittsburgh. We put the little copyright bug on the title. And when they took the title, it should have been at the end of the film.
They took it off.
When they took the title,
they took away the copyright.
They didn't notice, we didn't notice.
Wow.
It was like zap. So, after 3 years, everybody, any one of you can go out and make video versions of this movie.
Right, and edit
it's
in
public
their
domain.
friends.
Yeah. Well, that was done by our own guys.
Yeah.
The company that a bunch of those of us that made the film. It's a little company called Image 10. It's actually 28 people, and they haven't. There's only a couple of them, Jack Russo, who have gone on to do anything else. So the rest of them keep trying to figure out ways to make money with Night of the Living Dead. So they did the colorized version. I went along with the remake, which I thought would be a good thing for Savini to direct, and I wrote the script.
Yeah.
That's the only one that I've sort of gone along with. But they've done everything. They did an anniversary edition. They shot new footage. They cut it, added. They just keep trying to, make a buck on it.
Did you ever? You have some pretty strong social commentary in Night of the Living Dead. I mean, this is the '60s. You got a black guy smacking a white woman.
Yeah.
In the '60s. Did you ever get in trouble for that? I mean, did the Klan ever call you? Or?
No, Dwayne was afraid they might call him. I didn't realize how we had written the script colorless. I mean, the guy was not the guy's race was not described.
No, and there's no racist epithets anywhere in the movie.
No, and we decided that was what we were most proud of, is that when Dwayne agreed to do it, we didn't change the script.
Right.
He argued, and I think now maybe he was right, that we should have. Not to make it, an angry black-white confrontational thing, but to just address it.
Oh, maybe. But
because he's wrong in the end, and his point was that sometimes a person in a minority can see certain things much more clearly than a person in the majority. But anger can mask certain other things, and that's really what happens to this character. He's, he gets so pissed off that he starts seeing things only his way, and he winds up making a mistake in the end. And then Dwayne felt all along that we should address that.
Really?
Yeah. And
so they should have gone in the basement.
They should have gone in the basement.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, you got him saying, "Look, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
I'm fighting for everything up here."
Yeah.
Now, he gets shot in the head at the very end. No one took you aside and was like, "George, come on, put in a happy ending."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We couldn't. We didn't get distributed for quite a while because of that. There were a couple of distributors that wanted it and wouldn't take it unless we changed the ending.
Really?
And naively, we just said, "Oh yeah, fuck you."
Somebody has to.
So, we always assumed, well, we'll get distribution somewhere. Let's walk out of here. And that's what we did. We walked away from Columbia and another studio, I think AIP, somebody else that wanted it. And, luckily we finally got somebody that said they would release it as is. But, initially it went out and it just played neighborhood theaters and drive-ins. And, it actually returned money. I mean, it cost us, we shot it on $70,000 cash and it cost $114 all in. And Movie returned somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000 within the first 6 months.
And that was back in the 60s.
And that was back
That's
in
a lot
the
of money.
60s. So it was a lot of money. But, there were a lot of screens back then.
Right.
B-movies, all those screens. That's when Ten Commandments was playing at the Criterion for 6 months. So all those neighborhood theaters just needed stuff to show. So, now Spider-Man comes out and all 4,000 screens are gone. In those days, most of the screens were available for B movies like Night of the Living Dead. So it went out and did very well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But then, people found out public domain and blah, blah, and all of a sudden, zip, it just stopped.
Right. It just all went away.
It all went away.
And now there is, and then you did Dawn.
Yeah. A long time after.
And how did Dawn happen?
I didn't want to just do I didn't want to do a sequel for the sake of doing a sequel. And I really didn't think seriously about doing one until I socially knew people in Pittsburgh that developed and built that shopping mall. And it was the first big indoor shopping mall in Pittsburgh. And they invited me out to come take a look, And he said, there's civil defense supplies here. This could be a shelter, and people could survive here, and they could get, they'd have anything they wanted. And I said, there it is. There's the idea. So I actually had started to write it, and this is serendipitous. It was pure coincidence that Dario Argento called me up, and said, asked if I would have any interest in doing a sequel, doing another Dead film. I said, funny you should ask. I just got this idea. So he actually flew me over to Rome, put me in a little apartment, and said, you right. So that's what I did. I finished the script, and then he brought in the first money, which was Italian, and then my partner at the time, Richard, found matching American bucks. And that's what happened. Going to see Dario in a couple of weeks. He's going to be at the Rue Morgue thing in Toronto. If anybody is going to be up there, we're doing a couple of panels together. Who should I say?
Now there is a novelization of the original Dawn of the Dead, with Susanna Sparrow.
Right. Richard, my partner at the time, made deals for that, and Martin, and he would always make some sort of a novel. Those were tax deals, I think. Those books, I think, man. I don't know. That wasn't my end of it.
So if someone were to, so who owns the rights to those?
Well, the company that Richard and I own still has the rights to Dawn. And he did the remake, the company did the remake. I wasn't involved with the remake. And, but he still owns the rights to the original film. I think probably Universal has the rights to the remake. But that's the only one that either of us retain any ownership in.
So theoretically, let's say if someone were to call their publisher, who's published them, and said, look, why don't we re-release the Dawn of the Dead novel? Mm-hmm. Would you get royalties?
I don't think so. Maybe through the company still. If the company still does, I don't know. It depends. So many of these deals are so arcane. You just know how it is.
Oh boy, yeah.
Wait a minute. Who owns this? It's like the DVD is. It's Universal.
Of course.
It's their DVD division, but somehow that doesn't count.
Right.
The stuff that they get away with is just
because they're owned by larger companies.
Yeah.
Who make nuclear weapons or whatever it is they do.
Right. Exactly.
So
you make a deal with Universal, you're supposed to get a certain piece of the action. They have their own DVD company.
Right.
And they make a deal with their own DVD company to only get a very small piece of the action back from the DVD company. And so then your smaller piece is only of that piece.
I know. A friend of mine, Alan Aldo, sued, I forgot, maybe it was Fox, because the residuals checks stopped coming. And they said, well, we've sold the DVD rights. And his lawyer did some work and said, you sold it to yourself. Yeah. You have another company. They sued him and he won, but that's how they do these things.
Yeah. It's amazing. So, you go along. I've just sort of made, listen, I never really complain about Night of the Living Dead because it sort of, I'm still here because of that, and it's been terrific.
It stands up.
And you know, I've sort of resigned myself to doing the work, and then I enjoy doing the work.
Right.
A few times I've gotten decent fees out of it, and the rest of the time I've gotten sort of other rewards. So, and the stuff is all still out there, man. I mean, that's just something that I could never have seen when I was out there. If you had to go rent a projector and a print, not.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies made same time Night of the Living Dead. They're not around anymore.
Yeah.
Scream Queens from Venus or Knots, whatever they were called. What's next?
Well, this film is almost finished. It's going to premiere in September. And then we have, you never know what's going to happen next. I have several projects. I have one really sort of balls-out zombie comedy thing that I'd love to do.
And that is?
I can't tell you. Yeah, it's too fragile.
Okay, so
I really can't, because it's sort of a one-trick pony, and I don't want to give it away.
So untitled George Romero balls out zombie comedy. Now this is crazy. I just thought it up on the spot. I've noticed, nowadays political campaigns, you can email in, $10 or whatever, things like that. What if
Debate question.
Yeah. Now, hypothetically, what if, let's say, someone were to set up a company and people out in the world were to send you a check for $10 or $50 or something like that and contribute to making a project?
Yeah, I don't know. I've had different opinions on that from lawyers. I mean, some people say that there has to be disclosure that technically it's an investment.
Right.
And
not a donation.
It's not a donation, and I don't know. And then if it's a donation, there are other problems. I think that I don't know that unless you're a political candidate,
right,
you can't get away with that shit. They can get away with it.
Now, also out there, is there a way? Let's say if you want to get a distribution deal, let's say you're going to a company. Is there a way for any of us to put pressure on, email whoever, and say like, if you don't, we will never buy, Spider-Man 8.
I don't know, Probably would, though.
Okay, so on your website, we'll look.
Yeah, I don't know. I really, there are ways for people to make themselves known. But there's such a huge fan base out there for the genre that I find that almost no matter what I do, it's mixed reviews no matter what you do.
Yeah, but
some people love it, some people hate it, and most people are down the middle.
But you've got a huge fan base. You could have people rubbed out if you wanted.
Yeah. No.
You have a following.
I could, create tribes. You guys go get those guys. I don't, but the problem is that, the fans are so, there are fans that really, love Dawn. And so they'll come down all over my ass for doing such a stupid thing as land. It's like, there's radical stuff. So, it's very hard. You can't get the whole army together. But I don't know. I just do the ideas as they come.
Right.
Some people like them, some people don't.
Right. You do it to please you first, and if other people like them, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I guess you've never had the urge when someone has asked you some, an asinine question like, "Why did you make Land?" You've never just said, "You know what? Fuck you. I made it, and if you don't like it, you can kiss my ass."
No, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't used those exact words, but that's pretty much my attitude.
Now,
I would never say "fuck you" to a fan.
Right? No. Of course not. Of course not. No, he's an executive on the other hand.
Executive on the other. The fuck is wrong with you?
I understand there was theoretically you were going to do something with J. Michael Straczynski. I know you guys were talking about the possibility.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Projects come, projects go.
Well, I mean, who knows what Straczynski's up to? Because, I mean, look, he's not here. If he were here, I would tell him that
Actually, we were talking about doing Diary of the Dead, among other things.
I flew out to see George. Was it Toronto?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you must understand, for me, probably the high point of my life and career was meeting George Romero. Because I am a Dead fan from way back. I've seen the first movie at least 50 times, no less. And all the ones that followed, and all the iterations of it. And what I came to George about was, wouldn't it be cool to do Night of the Living Dead, the TV series? Start with the very first zombie over, say, I don't know, a 5-year arc, and see civilization being destroyed. I thought it'd be great. And we must revisit that down the road at some point.
Well, I'd love to. We'll see. We can't wait for you to see this. Actually, I was trying to do I sort of switched horses there and said, well, why can't we use this as the basis or the starting point for it? But it wasn't TV enough.
We still do that. One thing I want to do also is, I don't know if you talked about the book you've done enough here, but it is the most extraordinary. I was hired by Paramount to adapt his book to a feature film. And when I heard it was available, I crawled naked and bleeding through 5 miles of broken glass and monkey vomit just for the chance, because this is an extraordinary book. It is so smart, it is so intelligent, it is so politically astute. I'm in awe of what he... While you're down there. What? Tied my shoes! My shoes were untied! What's wrong with you people? My God! I have something to tell him I can't tell you.
sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, is that great? The draft has been turned in. The draft's been turned in and good things are happening. But this is the man who started it all, who set the rules, who created the environment.
Thank you all.
And I have to ask you, given what you created, I was watching YouTube, I had nothing else to do one day, and they showed, have you heard about zombie walks? Yeah, 1,000 people at a time, all dressed as zombies, marching through Warsaw, which is almost redundant. And what intrigues me, in all your movies, there are always guys lined up out the door to be zombies, not just be the guys, but also be the zombies. What do you think is the appeal to playing zombies, to being perceived as a zombie, to putting on the makeup and doing those things? What do you think is the attraction?
Oh boy, don't ask me. I wouldn't.
What else am I going to ask?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just, it's dress up, man. It's fun to get up and try to do the most unique thing, be the most unique zombie. I mean, I don't know. What do you think it is? What is it?
There's one on Friday.
I don't know. You know what? We're gonna open up the floor to, and they're very strict about this, because I love you guys, but they, timing. 10 questions from the people.
From 10 people.
From 10 people. All right. You're not gonna make it. Okay. All right. Now there's a gentleman here in the blue shirt. The guy behind him. What's your question? No. Okay, yeah.
Tap the microphone. I don't know if it's on.
Okay.
Okay,
there it is.
good.
Throughout the zombie genre, we keep seeing the same basic stories in so many of the movies. People hold up somewhere, zombies are killing them off. Trial and error, they learn successfully or unsuccessfully deal with the zombies. Even you are coming back to that with Diary. Do we keep seeing it because that's what the fans want, or filmmakers can't think of another story?
Well, I don't.
Remember what I'm saying with absolute reverence for you personally.
No, I understand. See, to me, the stories don't matter to me. I always say you can lay 50 different stories on the idea. My films are more about what's happening today. In my view of what's happening today. Shopping Mall inspired that one. The Day of the Dead was about, mistrust and people holding up and just completely losing trust with each other. Land is, about the Bush administration, basically. And this one is about YouTube. I mean, this one is about this, many tentacled, about this explosion of electronic media. But the stories, when you say story, the stories don't matter to me nearly as much. I guess that's why that's what they basically are. I mean, I try to do interesting characters and have them react in interesting ways to the situation around them. But it's a rather extraordinary situation, so you're not going to have them, you can't do a little sidebar story while this is going on. It has to be a story that reacts to it.
Hello.
Firstly, kudos to Mr. Brooks. An excellent novel.
Thank you.
And I think I've got one up on you, George, because I've just driven 10,000 miles from Toronto.
Oh my God!
As part of a very long road trip. Anyway, and I think everyone agrees you are a fucking legend.
You live in Toronto?
No, I live in Liverpool.
Ah, okay.
I flew into Montreal, it's a long story.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, what I wanted to ask you about was your influence in the video game industry. Now, you can see Resident Evil, you're laughing because the amount of money that they've made off your ideas is untrue.
Land of the Dead video game, you get any money for that?
The City of the Dead, it just went down in flames, didn't it?
It's all part of that was a universal, part of the package that they did.
Oh, that sucks.
So I mean, theoretically, it goes in the pool, but yeah.
That was my main question. Is do you have any plans to kind of reach out into that area with that Spielberg? Recently, James Cameron's talking about Avatar as a big game. Do you have any interest in branching out and trying to kind of...
I've always said I've been approached several times by game companies, but they it's the same old thing. They don't want you to have anything, they don't want you to design it or have anything to do with it. They just basically...
Do you want to do it with me? Okay.
Yeah, get in touch, talk to Chris Rowley. I do.
Cool, man.
I'd like to start off by saying I think the idea of being a zombie, the great appeal to that is really just working for the great George Romero.
Oh.
I mean, in any facet possible.
Joe's asking about these zombie walks and things, and people when that aren't even have nothing to do with a film, whether it's my film or anyone else's. Just people are just enjoy getting out and doing it, and I don't know. It's just. I don't know what that is. It's a kind of a happening or something. That's what we used to call it.
We believe in your messages, George. We believe in it. That's why we want to be zombies.
Okay.
Where's the Friday zombie walk? Where's that taking place?
It's
But you can't. You have to.
Seaport Village! Let her answer.
Too many voices. But it doesn't do any good unless you eat people.
George, I'm from Pittsburgh, born and raised. I love your films. I love being able to walk around and see them, like see where they were done. And I noticed your stories keep going around Pittsburgh. And I was wondering if you'd like to, if you're trying to bring them back into Pittsburgh, bring film back to Pittsburgh.
Well, we tried with Land of the Dead. We tried desperately, and Honorado and a bunch of the people there were really trying to offer terrific incentives, but they just couldn't match the. They're just not well endowed enough. There are very few. Like New Mexico, I think, is offering some pretty good incentives now. But Pennsylvania just couldn't cut it. Now, I think maybe there's Canada. Everybody was, that was the easy place to go. I mean, people that really wanted to, get a dollar for every dime were, going to Bulgaria, South Africa, all the, wherever you can shoot cheap. But Canada was, friendly, English-speaking, great crews nearby, and I loved it. I mean, this is the third film that I've done there, and I love working there. But now the Canadian dollar is so strong, so it's almost even. So that's gone. But the incentives are great. But there very few states here offer those kinds of incentives. I really tried like hell to do it. And this film is I didn't, even though Land of the Dead didn't mention Pittsburgh, I sort of tried to make the city look like Pittsburgh.
That's not an establishing shot of Pittsburgh?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, it's based on an establishing shot of the triangle, but we changed the buildings around and put in Fiddler's Green.
Hi, my question's mostly for Max Brooks. I'm a huge fan of your books, first of all. I read them all the way through Europe when I was on vacation this summer. And I was thinking it'd be great if there was some kind of a role reversal where maybe if you worked on a movie and George Romero wrote a book using each other as influences, I think that some kind of great new ideas could come out of it. Like a guy before me was saying they're kind of running out of plot lines for movies. But if they could create kind of the mock nonfiction genre in a movie, like a fake documentary, in the same style that you did World War Z, it could be phenomenally successful.
Well, it's an interesting idea. I think the best thing for us to do is wait and see what kind of the gentleman who said that we're running out of stories. I'm going to wait to see the story that he thinks up. And we'll take it from there. But the genre is still strong. I mean, look who's here. Look at these two guys. I get to sit up here with J. Michael Straczynski and George Romero. So clearly there's an interest. So let's see. The future's wide open. Thank you.
And at risk of embarrassing him further, one of the really cool things about the book, and going back to the new ideas thing, is how Max applied them to today's political situation. For instance, when they began to build the wall around Israel, and the Palestinians wouldn't believe that there actually were zombies there, it was just a political excuse to build a wall, and therefore held off their own preparations. Tying into the apartheid in South Africa, it was just, so there is room to play if you want to really dig in deep into new areas, which you've done in the book.
Thank you.
Yeah, real quick. Last year I picked up, I got a promo copy of World War Z, blew me away. Went back the next day, grabbed a copy and gave it to Bernie Wrightson. I think an illustrated Bernie Wrightson version of World War Z.
Well, it's interesting. I actually had to sign, in my contract with Random House, I was not allowed to do a graphic novel of World War Z for 5 years because they didn't want it to compete. However, the graphic novel for...
What's the timing on that?
A few more years. We do have a graphic novel for Zombie Survival Guide, The Recorded Attacks. So I'm working with that.
No more stories. How many stories did you tell in World War Z? 50? 60?
It's something like that, yeah. And Zombie Survival Guide, we have to cut it down because we're starting 50,000 BC to the present. So there's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah.
But yeah, William from Avatar, great guy, single. So thank you.
All right, love you guys. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
Hey guys, George, Max, first of all I'd like to say thank you very much. Your books and your movies have inspired me in my own writing, and I guess what I'm kind of asking is advice on people who are so deeply involved in this genre that they've, begun to pull ideas and, think of script writing and think of writing their own book. I always come back to cannibalizing your books or your movies, and I was wondering what advice you guys have for anyone trying to write into this genre to keep the ideas fresh, to keep them, new. So,
boy. As I said, my ideas run more towards an socio-political observation, and the stories, the surface stories of the characters are just, I try to dream up characters that make sense within the given situation that I'm talking about, and that's it. I'm much more concerned about that underbelly, about what's this piece of shit about. Cool.
Yeah, I think I would just say you have to start with what you're passionate about, and don't be worried about copying someone else, because if you're unique enough, years and years ago, Star Trek at Deep Space Nine was coming out, and some other goofball thought he could do a show about a space station. And I'm sure everyone's like, oh my God, it's going to be exactly the same. It was completely different. One was good and amazing, and another one was a follow-up to another series.
Thank you very much, guys.
What also is, what these two have in common in their work, incidentally, which may also be informative to you, there's an old saying, a book is like a mirror. If an ass peers in, you can't expect an apostle to peer out. What the zombie stories tend to do is mirror the person who looks into them, wherever that environment is, whatever situation, their political background, their social background. What they are magnifies and reflects us in our truest form. And as long as those characters are interesting, those environments are interesting, as these guys have always done, the stories will be interesting.
Well, yeah, it's like what someone said about the zombie movie seemed to always be about somebody holding up in a house. That's not what it was about. And these aren't slasher hacker movies. This is all about social commentary. It's about us. It's about what we're going through. How do humans react under pressure, in a crisis? That's what science fiction is supposed to be. It makes it easier to swallow than just telling it.
I just have one more question for George. I was wondering if you will be working with Simon or Ed anytime soon again.
I hope so. Simon did a voice for, did a newsman for me over the phone for a diary.
Hi, I'm Joran. I'm from here in the state, and I was wondering, because I know there was a gentleman who wrote Monster Island, Monster Planet, and Monster Nation. Are there any other things within the genre that you are impressed with, like other authors or other filmmakers, or are there any other things that you think are absolutely terrible and absolute garbage?
Did you say impressed with or depressed about?
Impressed.
Oh boy. I'm not a student. I don't run around and buy everything that comes out, so it's pretty hard for me to speak to that in an educated way. It's a writer that I like named Al Goingback. He's a Seminole. He's done some pretty interesting things that I'm thinking about converting one of them now, talking to him about. But, that just comes from personal contact. I don't run around, my ideas have all come sort of from me, and I don't, I sit around at home and listen to music, and I don't have a big collection of stuff, and I'm not like an avid, I'm not out looking for new people or new material or anything like that. Yes, these guys probably speak to that better than I.
I actually haven't read. There's too many zombie books out there for me to read. My research is all real. It's all nonfiction. I spend too much time looking at what's happening in the world, and I'm just a big nerd, than to worry about zombie stuff. I know now how U.S. laser weapons work. Yay. That helped me on World War Z? Never again. So yeah, I don't know what's out there either, really.
Yes, Mr. Romero, my name is Philip. I just want to say that you're a great inspiration, and Martin is probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
Thanks.
My question is, what if your opinion on the take on the genre you started, the zombies, with new people done, like with Shaun of the Dead, or maybe 28 Weeks Later, which really isn't a zombie, but what is your take on what other people have done with what you created?
Well, Max's stuff is terrific. I didn't think 28 Days was, it's not really a zombie thing. Sean, I'm wearing the button. So I thought those were terrific. The remake of Dawn, I thought Zach did a pretty good job at. He did a pretty good job. It's an action film. It sort of lost its reason for being. But
yeah, the mall wasn't a character. It could have been anywhere.
Yeah. I don't know that you could do that about do the same thing with a mall today. But, yeah. That's it.
Is that it? Are we good? Ladies and gentlemen, J. Michael Straczynski and the Honorable George Romero.